The city of Lethbridge has many wonderful parks and natural areas. One of the great features that so many of us appreciate about these natural areas are the ponds and the wetlands. And we wanted to take a deeper dive to learn more about the importance of these special places. So we asked Kirby England, who is a local plant and wetlands expert from Lethbridge College, to join us today. Kirby, welcome to Bridge City News. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Jeanette. Appreciate it.
Okay, so in addition to being on the faculty at Lethbridge College, you teach environmental sciences, right? So part of your biography also says that you're a riparian analyst. So maybe explain to our viewers what that is and what you
do. Sure. So that's a little bit of an older title, but I'll run with it.
Sure.
A riparian area is basically that transition between an aquatic ecosystem and a terrestrial ecosystem. So in Lethbridge, we're home to, I think, North America's third largest river valley park, which is pretty impressive. And because we're home to such a large river valley park, we're home to a huge amount of riparian area. And so as a former career of mine was as a riparian analyst with a group called Cows and Fish, which is, of course, sort of founded in Lethbridge, and many Lethbians will know well, or Lethbridgeans, I suppose.
Yes, exactly.
You'll know which one is correct. And so, yeah, I kind of went on from that. I'm still a riparian area and wetland ecologist here at Lethbridge College, and also for my own environmental consulting firm, which is called Environmental.
Well, then you would be the perfect person to ask this question to. Why are the natural wetlands that we see in the community parks around us, why are they so important?
Yeah, well, we should step back ever so slightly there. Few of the wetlands in many of our community parks are actually natural. There are a few, certainly along the river valley, some that were sort of formed by more natural processes. But a lot of the wetlands that we do have in the city of Lethbridge are engineered wetlands or designed wetlands, which is fine. It's sort of a benefit of having irrigation in the district, as there's all of this extra water to go around. And those wetlands play really important roles with regards to that water. They do lots of water filtration, extra water storage, and then, of course, the part that we can appreciate when we go to those spots is the huge amount of biodiversity that we're going to see there. So all of the birds that take advantage of the wetland, fish in some of those systems like Nicholas Sharon and Riverstone Pond near where I am. And then, of course, all of the beavers and muskrats and everything else we sometimes see in our city of Lethbridge.
Yeah, definitely. So can you maybe compare those with the importance of wetlands in and around a farmer's field, for example?
Definitely. So in both cases, the sort of common expression is the wetlands are the kidneys of the ecosystem. They're doing all of this water filtration, removal of pollutants, removal of nitrogen and phosphorus, things that are pretty common around many a farmer's field. And so those wetlands are basically improving the water quality. They're improving the conditions for soil microbial activity for a variety of organisms. And so just as they're important to have within the city, they're really important to maintain out there on the land. And the numbers on this are, approximate, but I believe it's about 78% of all wetlands in the prairie pothole region, which of course we're a part of, have been converted or otherwise removed. So it's really quite an imperiled ecosystem when 4 to 5 are already gone, and we're still continuing to convert those wetlands.
Well, everyone thinks that beavers are cool and, always busy. They can maybe sometimes cause problems for landowners. Do we have beavers closer to Lethbridge? I believe I've seen at least a couple.
You certainly have.
Yeah.
So one of the things we just did this last fall as part of some work with the city of Lethbridge was a sort of active lodge survey. And the numbers may have changed slightly, and hopefully I'm okay releasing this data, but we had around 15 active lodges sort of entirely along the river within the city of Lethbridge. So, you put it at around 5 beavers on average in each of those lodges. And, we may have anywhere from, say, 60 at the low end to 80 at the high end, or 90 at the high end, but 75-ish beavers in and around our river valley. And many folks, of course, have seen them. And a real highlight in this city is the high level bridge, of course. And a real highlight for me as a beaver researcher was to find a beaver colony right up against one of the big cement buttresses of the high level bridge, and living basically right on the downstream side of that.
And did you find it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I was the first. And certainly when you're telling folks you're looking for beavers in the city, they're always going to say, oh, I know this lodge, I know this lodge. And so, but we did confirm, as of mid-October at least, that beaver certainly had built a good food cache there, meaning they're going to try and overwinter in that spot. So those Lethbridge folks who want to get out and see beavers, head down to the Helen Schuler Nature Center, take your trail network out to the riverbank, and you'll see that big, impressive beaver lodge right on the back.
Sounds awesome. And speaking of Lethbridge folks that want to get out and about, do you have any favorite natural areas around the city that would make for a great weekend afternoon visit that you could recommend?
Definitely. So, I mean, that's one of them. Head on down to the Helen Schuler and get onto that the River Walk and Coulee Walk. Any of those. I mean, Coulee Walk less of a beaver spot, obviously, but certainly a good one if you want to get a little more of a wild Lethbridge experience. We like 6 Mile Coulee in behind Lethbridge College here. There's some active beavers in there. At any point in time, actually, some students out right now doing some willow staking and some habitat improvements with the Old Man Watershed Council down in 6 Mile. So definitely a good spot to check out. And then, even if you just want to sort of see a wetland and see some of this biodiversity, places like Helen Schuler, Nicholas Sharon are a good spot. Nice trails. You're going to get the full treatment there.
Wow. Okay, so switching gears from beavers to
Sure.
let's talk about cattle. So while doing some research for this interview, my producer found that there were studies done using cattle grazing and native plants to regenerate wetlands areas down actually in Nevada. So that group seemed to have a lot of success in bringing the wetlands back to that part of the state. So have you done any similar research rather on the benefits of grazing cattle around wetlands in southern Alberta?
Yeah, so not me personally to the extent, I mean, with that group, Cows and Fish, which is the full name, Alberta Riparian Habitat Management Society, that whole thing was born out of exactly what you've said, that, sound stewardship of riparian areas and wetland areas by livestock producers can really have huge benefits both to cattle and to fish. And of course, fish thrive on aquatic ecosystems. And a healthy, intact riparian area is just going to improve the quality of that ecosystem. And so, certainly, we do have that work being done in Alberta. Lots of research to that. In fact, Cows and Fish is just celebrating 30 years, sort of in operation this Friday with a bit of a gala. So it's certainly something that's been ongoing in our province for 3 decades now. Yeah, I don't do as much in terms of direct benefits of grazing. It's not so much the cattle going in there and chewing down vegetation per se that's going to improve your wetland or your riparian area, but it's following those principles of range management and sort of managing with ecosystem function in mind that will improve overall quality. And that's what they've shown down in Nevada and elsewhere. And then of course, beavers are a natural benefit to wetlands and riparian areas as well. They sort of manage those. And so there's getting to be a good body of research showing that too, that when you couple, beavers with bringing back the water and then cattle and good, range operations, there's benefits for the fish, for the water, for the wetland, for all the above.
Maybe so that viewers can understand it a little bit more and have has a little bit more impact. Are there any success stories or wetland renewal projects happening in southern Alberta right now?
Yeah, lots. Sorry, putting me a bit on the spot with that.
Okay.
So one of the things, if you want to check out on actually the Cows and Fish webpage, is basically what they call demonstration sites. So there's been a number of ranchers in southern Alberta that have seen sort of the benefits of sound riparian management, and they've presented themselves as demonstration sites. So they've kind of led the way. And I could quickly look a couple up. I'm just Ellert's would be an example, and others. And then through the Old Man Watershed Council, one of the things they regularly do is host field tours and other things, and they get people out to see projects where they've done wetland and riparian area restoration, and basically showcase the success of those efforts there. So either of those organizations can sort of point you in the direction of lots of really well done riparian and wetland improvement and stewardship projects.
Now, Kirby, what important function do the wetland plants and animals do in the winter?
Well, I mean, basically survive until spring when they can do it again.
Just like all of us.
Yeah, just like all of us, exactly. Try not to die. And, there's still, of course, the biodiversity benefit to all those native species that don't migrate, that stay here over the winter. Plants, even when the above ground vegetation is mostly dead, still have that root mass that's holding that soil together. So preventing erosion, preventing, sedimentation into the channel, kind of catching things that would otherwise wash into those wetlands. So they're still playing that benefit. And then, the wildlife species are still a part of an ecological community. So prey for predators and likewise predators to help manage prey populations and nutrient cycling and all those sorts of steps that never stop.
For sure. Okay, so let's talk about another field that you specialize in, and that would be plants. So, what made you want to research and study plants?
Well, eyesight mostly. So I was going to be a wildlife biologist, and I start working, on a grizzly bear project. Well, that was fine. I could see bears and do that work. But then we're out there looking at birds, and what's this brown thing that just flew by? And somebody goes, "Well, that's a so and so." I didn't get that. I tell you, it's a little brown bird, and that was just kind of the realization, like, oh, wildlife's really moving fast, and you got to identify it. I like learning what things are. I like identifying them. I've always done lots of that. But with plants, you get time to sit there and look at it and really understand it. And of course, that's sort of a tongue-in-cheek answer. Really, what it is for me and plants is they're just such a foundation of the habitat. And you wouldn't have the bird in the tree if you didn't have the tree. And you wouldn't, in our case, as we learned, have these big bears out on the landscape if there weren't foods, mostly plants, to sustain them through all the seasons. And so I just see plants, as many do, it's such a foundation to that functioning ecosystem. And although maybe not as charismatic as some of those, big mega carnivores and other things, the plants deserve our understanding and our respect. And I like to do what I can to help people better understand and appreciate plants.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. In the wild areas around Lethbridge, are there any issues with invasive plant species?
Oh yeah, it's extremely abundant. So, all of Alberta that's subjected to agriculture and anywhere we've really had humans settle, you often bring plants with you from elsewhere. And initially, some things that seem maybe beneficial, like carigana and other species, they were Eastern European plants that allowed you to establish windrows and minimize soil erosion and other things. Over time, they just sort of grew unchecked, and now they've invaded and displaced a good number of native species. And so, yeah, we've got a good number of invasive plants, of all life forms. Trees like Russian olive, shrubs like carigana. Yeah, it's just a long, long list of weeds. Pennycress and many others, kind of some of the thistles, and then even grasses, downy brome, which gets called cheatgrass. It displaces native grass communities and cheats everybody on the rangeland, doesn't have much for forage value. And, in the United States and elsewhere and in Canada too, we've lost, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of acres and millions of dollars in lost revenue just by losing ground to some of these invasive species. So it's a major concern in this part of the world.
Okay, well then, Kirby, it looks like we are about out of time, but thanks so much for the conversation. Always great to open our eyes into a broader view of a world that we don't necessarily live in.
Yeah, no, you do live in it, definitely. And I'm always glad to share some of this information. And for anybody interested, of course, we're here at the college. We're happy. Lots of the plants and other things we've talked about are on display in some of our collections, which are open to the public. So definitely come check it out anytime. Always happy to do these sorts of interviews. Take care.
That was Kirby England, a professor and floral and wetlands expert from Lethbridge College.